What if the deadliest hunter who ever lived carried no speed, no strength, no rage at all? Only the terrifying patience to stand so still that the ice itself forgot he was alive. Picture a world where the air bites at 40 degrees below zero, where the ocean does not wave, it hardens, freezing into a living wall of white that groans and shifts as if something enormous were breathing beneath it. This is a place that kills the careless in minutes, that swallows the loud, the fast, the impatient without mercy. And yet here, at the frozen edge of the world, the Inuit did not simply survive. They did something far stranger. They stopped fighting the Arctic, and they started listening to it. And that single choice is the whole story. To the outsider, this looks like the end of everything. Endless white swallowing the horizon. A silence so total it feels like the world has died mid-breath. But that silence was a lie. Or rather, a language. One that most human beings would live and die without ever learning to hear. Below the ice, seals slid like shadows behind frosted glass, rising again and again to the same fragile holes, leaving a rhythm written in pressure and water for anyone patient enough to read it. And hold on to this, because it changes everything by the end. In the Inuit tongue, there was no real word for wilderness. No word for a nature separate from themselves. There was no line between the hunter and the frozen world, so the question was never how to conquer this place. The question was how to listen, until the silence itself began to speak and told him exactly where death and survival would rise next. In this frozen world, the seal was never just an animal. It was survival itself, wearing flesh. Its fat became warmth, burning slow against a cold that wanted every family dead by morning. Its oil became light, a small, trembling flame pushing back months of unbroken darkness. Its skin became clothing, a second body sealed against wind that could freeze a man where he stood. And its meat became energy, the thin and desperate bridge between one winter and the next. Nothing about it was excess. Nothing was ever wasted. But here's the part that outsiders never understand. The seal was not a helpless prize waiting to be taken. It was intelligent, cautious, endlessly aware. It could feel vibrations traveling through the ice from far away. It could sense the smallest change in pressure beneath the surface. It learned, quickly and permanently, where safety ended and danger began. And so the hunter could never win through force, because force was exactly what the seal was built to detect. Strength meant nothing here. Speed meant nothing. What mattered was understanding. The ability to read the seal not as a target, but as a rhythm, a living pattern moving beneath the frozen silence. This is why the hunter's most important tool was never meant to be a weapon at all. The harpoon in his hands was something else entirely, something closer to a promise. Though you will not understand what that promise truly meant until the moment it is finally kept. And there is one more thing the outsider rarely sees. To kill something this aware, this alive, was never a triumph. It was a weight the hunter carried, quietly, every single time. Long before the hunt could begin, the hunter had to read a world that looked to everyone else like nothing at all. He would move across vast frozen plains where every direction seemed identical, where hours passed beneath a pale and drifting light, and yet he was never lost, because he was not walking, he was reading. A small dome rising from the snow was not a bump in the ice. It was a breathing hole, hidden and waiting. A faint discoloration in the endless white was not a trick of the eye. It was trapped air, or moving water, somewhere just below. Even the thinnest crack spreading across the surface was a sentence in a language older than words, marking the secret paths where seals traveled beneath the frozen ocean. Because the ice was never dead to him. It was a living surface, shifting, pressing, breathing, revealing what lay beneath only to those patient enough to notice. and this knowing could not be taught with speech. It was passed down in silence, from one generation to the next. A child sitting beside his father through entire winters, saying nothing, only watching, only absorbing, until the reading of the ice became something felt in the body rather than spoken aloud. When at last he found the hole, the true test began. He lowered himself onto the frozen surface and he waited, sometimes for hours, exposed to a wind so sharp it felt like invisible glass dragged across the skin. He did not move. He barely breathed. Time itself began to dissolve, minutes losing meaning, the whole world narrowing into a single point of awareness where the hunter and the ice became one thing, one stillness, one held breath. And then, without warning, the water changed. He felt it before he saw it. A subtle shift in the water, a faint ripple where a moment ago there had been only stillness. And now, at last, the promise in his hands revealed what it truly was. The harpoon was never built to kill by force. Its head was designed to detach on impact, to anchor deep beneath the surface while a strong line stayed fastened to the hunter's grip. That was the promise. Not a strike, but a connection. A way to hold on to something he could no longer see. To keep control of a life the instant it vanished into the dark water below. Then, it happened. The seal rose through the breathing hole, breaking the frozen surface for a single fragile instant, caught between one breath and the next. The hunter did not panic. There was no wildness in him, no hesitation. Everything had already been decided in the waiting. One breath, one motion, one precise strike, guided not by luck, but by generations of knowledge living inside his hands. The line went tight, the seal dove, and beneath the ice, an invisible struggle began. He did not fight it wildly. He did not tear at the rope. He read the resistance through the line, feeling every surge, every turn, every burst of desperate strength traveling up into his fingers, guiding what he could not see with nothing but tension and patience. This was never about overpowering the life. It was about following its energy until it softened on its own. Slowly, the pulling weakened. The rhythm faded. The ocean grew still once more. And as the seal returned to the surface, the hunter did something the outside world would never think to do. He whispered his thanks. And when the hunt was over, nothing was left behind, because in this world, there was no such thing as waste. The meat became food, carrying whole families through winters where nothing was ever promised. The fat became fuel, burning steady inside stone lamps against the long polar dark. The skin became waterproof clothing, and the bones became tools, frames, the quiet architecture of survival itself. Even the smallest fragments were treated with care, because this was never domination. It was exchange. The animal gave its life in one form, and that life was carried forward through use, through respect, through responsibility. Nothing taken without meaning, nothing discarded without thought. And now, at the very end, we can finally answer the question we began with. Why was the greatest hunter never the fastest or the strongest? Because in the Arctic, survival never belonged to those who forced their will upon the world. It belonged to those who understood it deeply enough to move with it instead of against it. To observe first, to wait longer, to act only when understanding was complete. This was never truly a story about hunting. It was a story about perception, about the power to see life where others saw only emptiness, to hear meaning where others heard only silence. And perhaps that is the part that should stay with us. Because we live in a world louder than it has ever been, so full of noise that we have nearly forgotten how to listen at all. The Arctic still remembers. And if these forgotten worlds move something in you, stay a while longer. There are more silences still waiting to be heard.